Sorry, my husband's on a Zoom call too, and I could hear him more than I could hear you all.
Gary,
Yes.
just put your phone on speaker. You don't have to hold it.
Okay, we're live
Okay.
on YouTube.
Okay. I'm ready to call the meeting to order. Notice of the meeting has been published and posted in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act and the requirements of the town of Key Island. We have a set of minutes that were circulated. Do you have any comments on the minutes?
No.
Approved.
So hearing no comments, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Does anybody have any comments regarding our schedule or any information about any of the events that we are still planning to hold?
The CJO wants to talk again in November or so and see what is possible for them to do. They are now doing live concerts outdoors at Firefly Distillery. And there is, if you were a season ticket holder, you get the code to get into it. If you're not, you can get in for $10. But they're typically having for these concerts 9 musicians, or sometimes 10, sometimes 8, and they are socially distanced with 2 rows, a back row and then a front row, and staggered. And that it may be the only way that they would be willing to do a concert for us in January. They still think that they can't do a concert with only 250 people and in the audience, paying people in the audience. And so far, the governor's holding with that, as far as I know. Maybe some of you have heard something else. So that's the CJO is a question mark at this point.
Okay. I don't know, Becky, do you have anything new about the CSO concert? I know we talked about it last time. And
Well, since then, we've got the contract signed. They have agreed to play at Holy Spirit, have a few more musicians. We haven't talked about limiting the audience or anything because it's not until March. And they will do the program that they were going to do in the fall, which is, well, I'm not sure if they mentioned the second piece, but they will do the Beethoven's Fourth and accept our $12,000 offer to add to what we were going to pay them, and they've signed the contract. So that's all accomplished. And we hope it will happen.
yes. Thank you. Anything else on
Gary,
the?
I have a question. Yeah.
Sure.
The money that we were going to be spending this fall on our programs, what has happened to it?
Well, I mean, Keely might speak more accurately than I can, but essentially the town reduced our budget so that it no longer accommodated the fall in light of the reduction in accommodation tax revenue.
What about the money that's not coming from the town?
Well, what we have left.
You mean like ATAX?
Yes.
No, that all comes from the town now.
So we have money that comes, I guess, out of the town general budget is part of it for the Arts Council. Then we get it out of the the Cultural Events Fund, which is driven by accommodation taxes. And because of the virus, collections there were a lot smaller. So when we decided to cancel the fall, it was partly based, of course, on the concerns about whether we could safely have concerts, but also the town reduced the budget in light of the accommodation taxes and also the decision that we shouldn't have those concerts because of safety. So that money is gone, I guess, is the short answer.
In the information from the mayor, he indicates that the town is $2.6 million reduction, and that they're on top of another $1 million shortfall. Wow, that's a lot of money we don't have and not gonna be around. Was that taken into consideration when we're doing all of this planning, I hope? By somebody?
Yes,
Yeah.
what we have is not in question. The amount that we've been provided by the town is our amount. That's not going to change.
So this shortfall, there's not gonna bother us?
No.
Okay,
That was taken into account when our budget
good.
was reduced.
Keely, but then for next year that we're starting to plan for, I think I asked Stephanie at our last meeting whether we should assume that we would have a similar budget to we had this year before the COVID reduction, and she said that should be our working assumption.
That's correct. We have nothing to indicate anything different than our normal amount for 2021, 2022.
Does that answer your question, Bill?
yes, oh, yes. Yep, I didn't know where that was going. It's all good.
Okay, moving on to new business. The materials included we're calling these working group guidelines. The idea here is, first of all, we basically followed what the historical dollar amounts and event numbers for each of the genres, and Keely put together these nice little working group things for people to have. It's not that this is written in stone, but if the groups don't have some sense of where they've stood historically and stay somewhere in the ballpark there, obviously in January we're going to have either a large shortfall or a large excess of proposals. So they're intended as guidelines and offered in that spirit. I don't know if anybody has any comments on those materials.
I thought they were really helpful, and thank you, Keely, for putting those together. They look great.
Yes, nice job.
I have gone back through my things that I've saved online about our timeline for doing things, and I have managed to not be able to find that. I have lost it. Keely, could you send me, and maybe some other people would like to have that timeline of when we're going to be doing things?
You mean the month by month?
Yeah, the month by month, yes.
Right.
Meeting?
Managed to lose it.
Okay, well, if Keely or I will send it to you. The next thing was anchor events and diversity considerations.
Right.
We produced this chart to show events that we have had frequently and how often we've had them in recent years. I'm sure there was other events that people on the council would regard as anchor events that aren't here, maybe Pure or whatever. And the idea, I think, was that some of us worry that we get into a habit of putting the same events on over and over and over again, and maybe it isn't as stimulating to our audience. I know others feel that these are the best events in the world and would want to see them over and over anyway. When we first talked about how we're going to do these working groups, and I think it might be reflected even in some of the materials, I thought that question kind of posed a council question that might be usefully addressed by the council before the working group started to do their proposals. But then as we approached this meeting, that didn't seem to make any sense to me. I mean, you don't know, first of all, whether all these people will be proposing again, what exactly they'll be proposing, how it will compare with other things that we see that are available. So I discussed this with David and Keely and Stephanie, and I think they thought that the same way. So we won't vote on whether to have any of these particular anchor events again this year. I think it's useful for us to be mindful of how often we've had them, and then I think the appropriate working group will then decide whether to recommend to have them again this year.
Well, looking at the ones that we have listed as anchor events, most of these are from the cultural events side of our planning.
That's true. And I guess on that front, Keely, you might mention, we've already received quite a few applications on the cultural event side.
Oh, good.
I think.
Yeah, I can pull that up and let y'all know. Let me get to it. So we have received Blues by the Sea, the Columbia City Ballet. They're proposing Off the Wall, Jonathan Green again. The Charleston Symphony we've received for the Tour of Homes. We've received 2 for Marantz, a Broadway and a Christmas.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So I mean, I think it's obvious what groups the ones we've received fall into, and I'm sure Keely will keep forwarding them as we get more of them. So we're not proposing to vote on any of this today, but we'll just consider it as part of the process. Does anybody have any thoughts or objections to that approach?
Are we going to keep in mind still the ATAC, the money that was coming in through an ATAX was to be used to bring people on to Kiowa that normally wouldn't come here, and we spent a lot of time with finding out where people come from, how many miles they traveled, and so forth and so on. Are we still gonna, is that still an important part of our discussion with different events? Or is that changed at all with the administration?
No, I think it's still relevant to the cultural events applications. I think we've tried to streamline the application so we're not collecting a lot of information that we don't really need, and it's work for them to put together. But it's the funding source and the criterion for those events has not changed.
Do we expect to have them keep record of where people come from, or submit that as part of their application as to where they're advertising, where they're going for that to draw people in from Goose Creek or from North Carolina or from Myrtle Beach or whatever?
you want to speak to that, Keely? I think it's the same thing we've asked for before.
I don't think that information is actually I don't think that's necessary anymore. I think that was very important to a certain council, but is no longer something we need to be doing. I'll double check with Stephanie, but as far as I know, we've never utilized that information. Since I've been here, we haven't looked at that information or utilized it at all. And I don't think it's necessary that they or we collect it.
Okay. I mean, I think Stephanie was mostly involved in sort of streamlining this process, so she probably has a better sense of that, but.
Right.
We'll,
She worked with Stephanie Tillerson to find out if the parameters we were working on prior to were still what we needed to be doing. And it seemed like we could ease off some of these things a little bit.
So we'll circle back with Stephanie and we'll send out a note just to the council to tie up this loose end.
Yeah, because some people have put a lot of time into finding out and putting together, the people, where people come from, how far they are from Kiowa, and have kept records of that. But if that's not needed, that's saving an awful lot of time and a
Yeah.
lot of work on some people's part.
Why bother?
Yeah.
I think that was the thinking, but I think Stephanie's a little closer to it than.
Yeah, as long as if we have nobody to report to. I think in the past, we're supposed to have reported that to the group that governs all of that up in Columbia. But if we don't need to do that, that's fine.
I don't
Okay.
believe so.
We'll follow up on that. The other sort of topic here is diversity considerations. I think all of you were at the planning meeting when I talked about this, except maybe Van, I guess you weren't there, but when we did our initial vote and review this year, it concerned me that we had, and looking back over a 3-year period, we'd had very few women artists, not that many proposals by women, and even fewer accepted. And Quentin has brought in some great women artists, but it just didn't seem right to me, or representation of the talent out there, that we're putting on 30 events a year and maybe we get 1 or 2 women on stage with their husbands. So I don't propose to say we should have any particular numbers or proportions for this type of diversity or any other, but I do think we probably didn't pay enough attention to what we were doing with female artists, and maybe we should just kind of be a little bit more aware going forward as to whether we're ending up with just a lot of old white men and
a few young white men too.
Anyway, I don't think I know it's a sensitive topic, and I don't want to try to impose any particular outcome. I don't think that would be appropriate, but I also think we have a duty as a group that's spending public funds to try to make sure that we have an open mind in terms of who we provide opportunities to come to Kiowa and perform. Anybody have any thoughts on that topic?
Well, this is something that's in the forefront of a number of arts organizations. The National Organization of Symphony Orchestras is concerned about diversity too. Their emphasis is primarily on African American artists included, and that gets to be a challenge in the classical world. But there's several organizations of women in the jazz area who have been quite vocal for a number of years and are becoming increasingly vocal, talking about the opportunities for women in the jazz field. So our bringing this to the forefront of our consciousness is right in line with what a lot of other organizations are doing.
As Gary
Yeah, and
suggested, as long as the groups are mindful of this, I don't think we're after any kind of quota or
Right.
numbers. But I think what you said in terms of just having it in our heads and being mindful of what we're putting together is probably good enough.
Okay, thank you. Our charter requires us to put out an annual report, and in recent years, before I was here, it was mostly kind of a compendium of papers, minutes and emails and stuff like that were bundled together, and that was the annual report. Last year, we did something which was intended to be more of a kind of a promotional brochure to help people understand what we do and how we do it, and also an opportunity to thank venues and others that in the town that help us make it possible for us to do this. So that's how we did last year. Then we are doing the same thing again this year. I wrote the text here, and I basically followed last year. Again, even though it's a little repetitive, I wanted people to have in their hand something that would tell them sort of what we do and how we do it and what our budget is. And then also has the opportunity to thank people, and we'll send it out with thank you notes to the venues and others that help us. I think the layout that which Keely did and the colors, the photos are really, really awesome. It's really a fantastic
Gorgeous.
job.
Just gorgeous.
Yes.
I love it. So
Just one comment. I think it's great. There's the name of the artist missing on the second page.
The second
yeah,
page.
yeah, it's Carmen Bradford. Yeah, it did get noticed when it first went out, and so Keely has fixed that and sent out a new one.
Great, okay. No, it looks really good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keely.
Oh, thank you.
You make us look good.
She comes up with my favorite colors without even having to be asked. They just appear. So,
Well, you're very on trend, Gary.
that's probably it. Keely, do we have any correspondence?
I
Outside of,
have something, yeah.
go ahead.
It's not correspondence, but it's something I think everybody should know. Nick Miller, our piano tuner, has passed away. He had pancreatic cancer, and a couple weeks ago he passed away. I have notified John Eisenhart. Some of you might know him. He's very good, and he has agreed to be our piano tuner. He did tell me up front that in 2 years he plans to retire. So we need to keep our eyes and ears open.
Okay. Well, that's
Joan, I haven't met Nick. I hadn't met him. Was he married?
Yes, he was married,
Okay.
and he was a second marriage, I remember, for his wife, because they were having some problems with her son. But yeah, it happened so quickly, and you know, I was able to talk to him, I guess, in June, And then I have called periodically and I just get his answering machine saying that he no longer is working. And a couple of days ago, I called again and got his answering machine. And then when I was talking with John, he told me that he had died. And I tried to find it in the obituaries and couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
But it happened very quickly.
Joan, who is Charles Fox recommending for people to use for his instruments?
They have a person that they use. I've used John before and his credentials are very good, and that's why I contacted him. We can look into Fox also if you'd like.
Well, the only thing I was thinking is that sometimes when people have rented pianos from Fox, like we rent pianos from Fox, and Fox has stipulated someone to tune. I just wondered if we were going to run into that.
I've never had them stipulate. Yeah.
Okay.
For Steinways, they do, John Crucky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always good to have an
He's
extra
very good.
name just in case, because of scheduling anyway. It wouldn't hurt calling Fox.
Right.
Well, I have used someone who replaced Joe Malachi, who I used to use
Yes, I've used
at
him
my
too.
house. And I don't know if it's this person you're talking about. I need to look in my checkbook or something to find his name. But he was actually probably overqualified for what we need. He was very insistent about all the grand performances that he has tuned for. But I could find out his name and pass it on.
It's
And he
fine.
was taking all of Joe's calls. That's how I found it.
And I'm just looking online, there's obituary for Nick and lots of wonderful stories and comments. So maybe we'll,
You found it?
yeah,
Jody,
I just
found it?
Googled, yes,
Oh,
could you pass that on, Jody?
Yes, please.
absolutely.
yeah, I looked through the Post and Courier and that's how I was looking. I didn't look through Google.
This is McAllister Smith Funeral Home.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Oh.
So the first comment I just quickly want to read to you. As a kid, Mr. Nick would always fix up my really messed up piano like magic. He was so goofy and would let me play concerts for him.
Right.
Oh,
He was just a great guy. I
Right.
think I said when we first announced that he was ill that I felt like he was my piano's best friend. He was just incredible guy.
how old was he? He was not very old, right?
Oh, let's see if this says younger than us.
Yeah.
Though I've decided that
That's
most of
interesting
the
that-
world is younger than us.
Right, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't see it immediately, but you'll find it.
Okay. Any other committee member reports?
Well, I'm wondering when we're going to start our group meetings. So I think Jody's in charge of the big one, the Mozart one.
That
Do
is
you
a
have
big
any
one, isn't it?
thoughts, Jody?
When do you want to start, Becky?
Whenever. I'm not in a big rush. I don't have a lot of ideas yet.
Right. Well, looking at our timeline, Gary, I guess you and envisioned us starting now, September and October, right?
Yes.
October, yeah.
I
Okay.
imagine that there will be some who will want to, repropose things that were approved and then.
Absolutely.
So, but I do think, yeah, now we should start kicking around proposals and coming up with ideas. And I hope we won't have to have a lot of meetings, but we can certainly be communicating.
We can do a lot by email. So that large group, as Judy mentions, is Judy, Richard, Becky, Gary, Bill, and Van. So I will commit within the next week to get out an email with just a structure or something and getting your ideas and asking you to be thinking meantime about who you might want to propose. And then we can decide on the best time to get together after we come back from evacuating.
I can set up a Zoom if you like.
Yes, and those of us who are not on a group but have some ideas about another group, we can pass those ideas to some member of that group.
Right, absolutely. Anybody, yeah.
It might be easier to send it to the coordinator just because they will be trying to be a kind of a clearinghouse, but certainly everybody is welcome to provide ideas to any group. Okay, Chairman's comments. I don't have anything additional.
I was just wondering, go ahead. I was just wondering if we should go along with the idea that we're going to be doing something with an audience with people as we've done in the past, rather than considering anything in terms of people submitting or doing a virtual kind of presentation to us. We're going to leave that out for now. Because I keep looking in my problem is I keep looking, every time we get a group of people together, we wind up having to close up part of this school or a classroom or, and I assume that we just go ahead and make an assumption that we're going to have a Arts Council program sometime in the future.
Yeah, so we're talking about, what we're planning for now is something that begins a year from now.
Yeah.
And I don't, if people want to send in virtual or in some other way adjusted proposals to deal with safety concerns, I think that's fine. But our intention at this point is that a year from now we'll be in a position to go back to what we used to refer to as normal. I don't know what's normal anymore.
Whatever that's supposed to be, right?
Right.
And
yeah. I think a lot of it depends on if we're going to get a vaccine or not, or if it's going to work, or
Yeah, we don't know any of that, but I think that's our assumption, and then it also reflects assumptions about our budget and assumptions about accommodation tax activity and so on. A lot of it could be wrong, but I think it's reasonable to think that a year from now we'll be able to hold concerts, and particularly in a season which will end 18 months from now or so. Maybe we'll be. We often have a kind of a season that's more concentrated in March and February and so on anyway. So I think it's reasonable to proceed on those grounds, and certainly hopeful that it will be possible for us to have live performances again.
That would be nice.
Well, and I guess the question that I raised last time, and I think it's related to that, is I'm more concerned about the ones we have on the books starting in January.
Yes, very much.
And whether we are prepared to, say, do something for our patrons rather than having to cancel all of those. Mm-hmm. And that's, I know, a big discussion, and technology, but I think we may have to face it, or at least make some decisions about that.
I think that's a good point, Jody. I think,
One of the things, Gary, I was thinking about for the ones we have scheduled for beginning in January is when we start signing contracts, looking at the possibility of using the internet to get to more than the 250 people, but limiting it to the town of Kiowa residents, so that people who feel uncomfortable about going to the live event, whether it's at Turtle Point or at the conference center, might be able to stream it. And that's, lots of artists have contractual obligations that they won't allow streaming, but they're beginning to free that up a little bit given the circumstances. And if we limit it, and we can show them that we can limit it to the town of Kiowa, they might be willing to go ahead. And so as we negotiate those contracts, that might be something to think about.
But our contracts have already gone out, haven't they, Keely?
So our contracts have already gone out, and we don't have anything in January as of right now because the CJO is holding till November. So our shows, what we have on the books doesn't start until February. I like David's idea. My only concern with that is that it would require, if you're saying stream the live show, we don't have the money to do that. We just don't have the money to make that happen. So that it's unfortunate, but I think if you guys wanted a virtual option, we would be in an either or situation as opposed to a and. Now, also in our board meeting, Stephanie Tillerson gave us the deadline of November to make a decision on January. So if that provides some sort of timeline for the rest of the council that, we have to make a decision by that time. And
A decision on
whether we'll have January or not, or if we'll have to proceed with another route. But the CJO,
an arbitrary time deadline.
and we wanted to make sure there was 3 months of notice. It was a 2 or 3. My math's not good, but we wanted to give people to make sure we had advance notice for the artists. So all those rolling decisions would be made on that basis.
But because we don't know what the situation with respect to COVID-19 will be, how can the venue say yes or no to an event in, let's just say February or March? How can they do that in November?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
No, it's a great question. I don't think anybody has the answer to it. I guess what we would go on is if we're in a situation in November where we don't feel like it's possible, then I guess we'd have to look at it and say, is it going to be reasonably possible in 2 months?
Well, one bit of possible good news is in terms of the CSO is that they are already streaming some of their stuff this fall. And when I mentioned it to Kyle, he said they would be happy to help us do it for their concert here, which maybe they would do as part of their cost of what we're paying them, because they have the experience, the knowledge, the technology. But the other thing is, the Catholic Church is already meeting, Holy Spirit's already having live church services, whereas a lot of other churches are not, but it's such a big church that my friends who go to that church say they know how to do it, they space everyone out. And so if we had to have a concert with 250, I think they could handle that. We could go with Holy Spirit's kind of guidelines. The other thing I wanted to point out is the library, some of you may know, the Library Society is doing a concert very soon with Uri Becker and Chi Han Si. and they're going to seat 40 people. And they charged for the event. And I was very surprised, but a lot of people I know said, hey, I'm going. That's not a problem. And we opted to pay them some money, and they're going to send us a tape of the concert. So in other words, it's not going to be online for everybody to see, but we'll get a tape. That's probably not something we want to do, but my point is that many people are willing to go to the Library Society and space out. And that's in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Or, and I think the 2-month business with November is probably good for January events, because we're going to need a lot of, if we do hold these events, we're going to need a lot of training in terms of how to manage them, in terms of access and egress and restrooms, and working with the resort on their venues and the churches with their venues about how they want to handle things. That's going to take a while for us to figure out. So.
Yeah, Jody, I'm sorry. I don't feel like I answered your question about being arbitrary.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, as an Arts Council member, I don't think I'll be able to tell you in November that whatever procedures will work out, that I'll be there with you in February, in January. Okay.
And that's something I think we'd all take into account, is the
Sure.
level of comfortability of you guys working these events, and how
But
you
is it
feel looking
also
forward.
The venue, how would they know in November?
Well, so David, what's your sense from Barbara? Because I haven't spoken with her. Is she having things right now with capacity guidelines?
Yeah, she's having smaller than even 250. I mean, like groups of like 40 planning things, but it's all up in the air for her too, in terms of the bookings that she has on the books, because groups, they're waiting, they've got the governor's guidelines and they're trying to be really proactive in trying to figure it out. They've got safety considerations. I think I may have sent them to you that they've published. They're online, I think. If you go on the resort, like you're planning a conference, you can find out some information. But things are as up in the air for her as they are for us in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for the shows, particularly the CJO and Quentin, we can't really deviate from a certain number of people, right? Because they have to get a certain number of people, but
right. they have to have enough revenue that comes from patrons, ticket price, to make it possible. I did float an email to you folks, and I got a little bit of feedback. Quentin's asking if we can allow him to charge $30 for tickets. That makes his situation a good bit better, because he's used to having we can't get 250 people in Turtle and safely. So he needs 250 people to make things work. So the feedback I got from folks was, okay, is that what we want to go with? Let Quentin do $30?
Yeah, I
I was
think we
fine
did
with that.
the last meeting, right?
It's okay with me.
Yeah, and he is still thinking in terms of when to release his tickets. He typically does it in December, but he typically has a concert in January. And this coming season, he's got one in February and in March. So I'm going to suggest that he not sell his tickets until January, so we can get a clearer idea of whether or not we can actually do it.
Sure. But aside from those, you all can make, within the government's regulations, you all can decide if you want to have 50% capacity, or if you want to only do 30% capacity, because we have the money already. Now we do have some revenue budgeted in here to do all of these. So it's just unfortunately the position we're in.
I just checked my emails from Barbara, and she did have 2 meetings of 120 last month at the West Conference Center, West Beach. And then they've been doing weddings of about, under 100. So.
So I think we're still in a sense on Jody's question of how we figured this out in November, and I don't think there's any certainty that we'll be able to figure it out, but we are going to have to make a decision sometime in the late fall, and it's just as well that we, at least put a marker out there and work toward it, and see what other organizations are doing, see what our opening plan looks like, how feasible it is.
Every year they do the central open door. Last year it was.
It occurs to me too that
Shirley Salvo.
we're not going to be able to put out, at least not now, our calendar of events because we don't have enough information. Maybe what we need to do with that is just put it out month by month. And that's about the best we can do. I hear from people that they plan their trips to Kiowa in part around what our Arts Council events are, but they're going to have that hang loose.
Anybody else getting some ambient noise from somewhere?
It's me.
Is it you? Okay.
You're muted,
I like that idea, and maybe a communication with our patrons, if you will, about where things stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It is, truly.
Anything else anybody wants to raise?
Do we need to find out from people, am I got this correct, that in speaking with some performers, I understand that I could be contacted and pay an X number of dollars to have an event on my computer or on my television, is that right? That's streaming it to me?
Mm-hmm.
I could pay somebody. So the town would not pay anything. In other words, if you got 500 people that wanted to pay X number of dollars, that could be part of or pay for part of a performance. But isn't that one of the ways that you stream?
Isn't there equipment involved and so on that would need to be?
Well, this would
obtained?
not be the person coming to Kiowa. This would be the person who was able to do that themselves, right? Is that what you're saying, Bill?
Yeah, and then I would say, yeah, I want to see that, so I would pay X number of dollars to see that on my home, and I could have 5 people over, or it doesn't matter, but it wouldn't cost the town anything to do that.
Well, that's the situation that we have now. We see a lot of concerts virtually every evening. We see a concert. The Jazz at Lincoln Center puts out, 2 or 3 a day. And most of those are free. The Blue Note has a very good number of events, and you pay for those and you see them. We subscribe to the Berliner Philharmonic. We have access to their archives and on and on and on. So we as an arts council don't need to offer those type things because it's already available to people.
And there's a
What
lot
if
of it.
it's one of our artists? What if we can't have, okay, fast forward, horrible case example, it's April and we're not able to have Conrad Tao live.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he has the capacity to provide a concert that we
Right.
can offer to our audience.
Right.
Isn't that what you're saying, Bill?
Right, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I understand what as an example. So
And
again, just
I
something we might
know, yeah.
think about, thinking about.
Julian, who I had before, sends me concerts that he does once a month,
Yep.
you know, all over the world.
Who was that
It's
again? I missed that.
interesting. Julian Gargiulo, who, the pianist with the hair that we had.
But if it's, let's say we had Conrad come but we could only have a small number of people in West Beach, then I think the question is whether you could supplement that with
That's
some kind
another
of
way.
stream concert. And I think Keely was saying that would require funds. that we
Right.
don't.
I don't think we have that capability.
Correct,
It,
right.
it can be purchased, but we don't have it now.
And I was just saying, if we couldn't even have him at all come to
Mhm.
Kiowa, then could we consider that other alternative?
Yeah, because we also have to consider, I mean, if we're in a situation in April where we cannot have this concert, Conrad probably not going to want to travel here anyway.
Right.
Right.
So it would be better for him to produce that in a place where he is already.
Right,
and
has
we would,
resources,
yeah.
Some of the churches have obviously figured it out and bought the equipment because they're live streaming their
Absolutely.
services
Yeah.
every week. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't attended an online church service. I would think that our audience would perhaps expect a higher level of sound quality and things of that nature, which I personally, I couldn't do that. We would need to hire someone, I would think, instead of purchasing equipment.
Right.
Well, it's very interesting that I think that so many artists are performing from their very own living room, and maybe they're in a hall all by themselves. And so presumably they've got people or they know people that can do that with them, for them. And we might be able to get in on that.
Well,
Because I've seen, just like Judy, I've seen a lot of, piano performances, violin performances, quartet performances, etc. And I think these musicians know people that can do it for them.
Some of them do, but one of the agents that I have worked with quite a bit, and he's one of these people that, I know this is going to sound a little bit silly, but he has a good heart, and he treats the people who work, whom he represents, as if they're part of the family. And what he has done is he has gotten that information together, a whole batch of that kind of information together, and shared it with the artists that he represents, and encouraged them to do this on their own. Some have not been interested, of course, but some of them have. So I know that agent has done it, and he said that there were some others. So it's out there, yes, but it's better. It seems to me that it's better if it comes from the artist than if we try to get into the video production business.
And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about this. I don't want to be like that, because I think this is all really great ideas. I think there are tiers with the different live streaming you see from people. You can have the at home, just raw playing for the iPhone, and you can have, a setup at a church, and then you probably have jazz at Lincoln Center, which is really good. So it would take us evaluating what we what quality we feel comfortable putting out.
Absolutely.
And it would have to be high quality.
Yes.
And people are not going to be willing to pay for it otherwise.
In other words, it won't be possible. Pretty much.
Well, and only unless there was a turn, because we're paying for lighting and sound anyway. So
Yeah,
it's a question of how much more, because the equipment's not that costly. I mean, it's really the labor that it costs to man it, really, that ends up costing money. So
and we'd be saving on their hotel expenses. Quite a few expenses that might be
Travel.
applied instead to doing some kind of live streaming. And I agree about the quality, but I think these musicians are doing it with very high quality people.
And I think that's my only point, is that I think if we decided that we wanted the musician to produce it on their own, that would be a path we could follow, or we could have the live performance. I just don't think we could do both.
Bill up on a ladder on it with a camera tripod.
He wants to get back up on the ladder, don't you, Bill?
I've been doing a little videography lately just for friends, and let me tell you, it was bad.
Are they still your friends?
Yes, but the video was not good.
I know some people have said that they were making like a movie, a video of their performances and storing those so they could have those available if that was one case, where it would be, they have a connection with a television station or whatever, and they formed making actually a video, a film, and they could produce that as part of the performance. So that would be another possibility, but I think that's something that we have to think about, whether we can ever do it or not, but it can be costly or not costly at all, depending upon how we do it or think about how we do it.
But I guess for now, going forward, we're thinking, we're trying to evaluate whether we can do these things in person.
Right.
If
Yeah.
if artists propose as a supplement or a substitute some sort of streaming thing, we can think about it when they propose it. But I take Keely's point that for us to try to develop this capability for the beginning of the year would be both very difficult and also might involve money that we don't have. Okay.
Must be it.
It's a little frustrating, but this is where we are.
Yeah, I would hate to think we have an event and all of a sudden Kiowa goes on national news, having X number of people come down with the virus because we had an event on Kiowa Island that brought people together. So, I mean, you don't hope it's not going to happen, but every day in the paper, I see some things like that happening. Fourth grade class, the whole fourth grade class, teachers and everybody, we're all quarantined now. So,
Yeah, that's obviously
yeah.
not only a
Yeah.
nightmare of bad publicity, but a lot of people getting sick. And
Yes, yep, absolutely.
But I think as we go through the fall, arts organizations are going to continue to try to deal with these things and try to come up with protocols that work, and we can keep an eye on that and keep adjusting our own plan. And then at some point in the fall, we'll have to decide what to do, at least for the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I think it's a very creative time, and I think one of the things we can do is sort of stay up on what's happening and how it's happening.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can apply whatever to our situation when we know more about it. So I think there's a lot of exciting things going on. We have to look to something to be excited about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all. It's good to see everybody and see everybody healthy and full of ideas. Would we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Okay.